Selectors, and welcome to the Life First Podcast, where we're going to go over all of the Curiosity Diva L rigs that you can play. The next one we're going to be covering is Tawil Trey Heralding 1. So what does this new L rig do? Well, it's a red L rig. It's got the normal level 3 stuff, and its auto ability is at the beginning of your attack phase. If there are 3 or more red Signy on your field, you can enter charge 1. Once a game actions, you can look at the top 6 cards of your deck and separate them into 2 3-cards up pile. And, you can separate them into a 3-card face-up pile and a 3-card face-down pile. This is important, the difference between those two. You basically make 2 piles. One of them's got 3 cards and is face-up. One of them's got 3 cards and face-down. Your opponent puts one of those piles into the trash, and the other pile is added to your hand. This is something that you can do, which is interesting, right? There's 2 different ways to move with Tawil, and the first one is play red deck wins, right? And I think that's probably the best way to do it, at least currently. But there's also a world where you're playing from your trash, and you have some kind of like trash victory win condition where you can say, hey, it doesn't matter which of these 2 things that you put into the trash, I'll still win the game, right? Like, so for example, if one of those face-up piles says a bunch of things like, here's a winning card, end the combo, and some third card that's pretty okay. And then the face-down pile is something that says, hey, get a card out of the trash. And then the second one is a get a card out of the trash. And then the third one's like, whatever, right? And then the opponent's like, well, you can't have this face-up pile, so that'll go to the trash. Then you'll trash the things that combo together to win you the game. But you'll get the cards that are able to then play those cards, right? Like, get them from the trash and play them. So you'll win the game anyways, right? This is a common thing that often happens in other card games, and they look for an enabler, such as this type of effect. Currently, this doesn't exist in Wixoss. So what I'm saying is very theory land, right? We're going to play the red deck wins version of this deck because, as it stands right now, you can't do that wombo combo in Wixoss. But it is something to keep in your mind and eyes open for if this ever were to exist. In the meantime, my best advice that I can say when playing this specific ability is to play Politicky. Now, playing Politicky is not my favorite part of any card game. In fact, I frown upon it pretty much, because any good player is just going to look past the politics and go like, all right, I know you're trying to bait me into certain choices, but I'm going to go ahead and I know what's right. And I'm doing the correct threat analyzation here, and so bait, like that type of baiting won't matter, but it could get you an edge with this type of thing where you like, I don't know, you put in some good stuff in the opening pile, and you're like, yeah, if that's what I'm putting in for the face up pile, can only imagine what's in the face down pile. So that way they get rid of your face down pile and give you the face up pile, or vice versa. These types of things. It's very rock paper scissors. But if you like mind games in card games, this is something you could potentially do. Let's get into the deck list. With that forward aside. As always, I've got this on Cockatrice now, and we'll just go through all of the types of things that we're doing. So, at the L-Rig deck, it's actually very, very simple. There's not really a ton of choices when you are playing Ancient Surprise, and we are playing Ancient Surprise for this. Worlds Reverse is a very, 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 very strong piece, and makes the team worth playing on its own, even if the L-Rig deck itself is not super strong. And with our level 3 basically wanting a mono red deck, then what ends up happening is you end up with this type of Worlds Reverse deck. Now, there was a world where I debated playing like all of the multicoloreds, and still playing Worlds Reverse, and hey, look at that, we still are able to trigger off all of the things that we want to trigger off Worlds Reverse and our Enter Charge thing. But in the end, I just decided going for a red deck wins is the right approach, because we can just use the Enter Charge that we get from Tawil to fuel our either defense stuff from our L rigs, or more importantly, convert it into more removal on our opponent or on our next turn. So we're using at charge here at the first end. It is worth mentioning that you might want to use your at charge prior to using your World's Reverse, just so that way you can go ahead and get a better understanding of what you're going to be playing with. But it's neither here nor there. It gets you some enter. The deck likes to spend the enter on removal, so it fits. If you like Lancelot, you'll like this deck. At eject is just it's just another version of what is it called? Umir down. So it allows you to always sort of have a choice of things. The thing is, Ott's other level 2 is not good. So Ott eject is the best that you can do. It negates instead of prevents damage, which kind of stinks, but at least you get to target it. It's also important to note that Ott eject doesn't cost color to enter, unlike Umir down does. So it allows you to free yourself up from having very specific costs associated to your mono red deck, basically. And then for Umir, we're running the Umir draw. Just gets you some extra gas. It's always a good thing to have. And then we're using Umir Clear as the L rig of choice here. Like I said, I don't think you want to be playing Umir down and Ott eject. So I like Clear. Clear ends up allowing you, first off, to get more cards in hand, so you can just ditch all the cards that aren't relevant to you at that moment, which is something that mono red thoroughly enjoys. Drawing one up is great, but also drawing the opponent random cards means that you're likely stripping a guard from their hand, especially if they work so hard to. And Wixoss is in a phase where a lot of people are digging pretty hard to have a guard for their turn. Plus, Umir Clear, allowing you to freeze an L-Rig on your opponent's field, allows you to survive a little bit more damage, right? It basically counts as a guard on your own. It ends up being pretty good against team decks that still exist bouncing around the format. There's less team decks existing. And I just like the idea that it messes with your opponent's math, which ends up being very, very good for you. And we are in a non-zero scenario where the opponent, generally speaking, mills itself out quite freely nowadays because they're digging so hard to find guards, or they are milling themselves in black to do Deus-esque effects, right? So you actually can get a mill out with this, which is pretty cool. We're running Ancient Echo. Ancient Echo has just got the best enter cost for what it does. It's almost a team piece power level, just because it's got such a stringent requirement in terms of its your colors that you're doing. And it's very strong on that end. The plus 3,000 power can help against when you play against Machina Smash decks, so you can power things over the Machina Smash threshold and still get the damage in that you're looking to get. But really, the value comes in the fact that you can draw 2 cards, and it's a removal that you can use on demand. And then, of course, World's Reverse, right? Like I was saying, this is the whole reason why you want to be running a Ancient Surprise deck. You basically, World's Reverse more or less turns Tawil's deck into Lancelot the deck, where everything triggers a Lancelot effect, and Lancelot's triggered a double Lancelot effect. So it ends up being very, very good. You'll notice that I've only got 2 Lancelots here. And the reason is because, I don't think I need a million Lancelots when I've already got access to such a tremendous amount of removal. But I'm also running 4 Hera, so that is basically the Lancelot replacement. When you can run Hera, it's better to run Hera over Lancelot. Going right into our L-Rig deck, Bronze is a pretty natural choice. We need some amount of multicolors in order to do other things with our World's Reverse. And there are scenarios where we're going to want to draw cards, right? Yes, you could run the Enter Charge version of this instead and get yourself a green if you'd like, but realistically, you're not going to be doing that. You're going to be using this to draw yourself out of holes. And that's also where the Hakat comes in. Again, you're not... This is the... How do I phrase it? Right? So you're not going to Ancient Echo, right? And then, I guess you could, Ancient Echo, and then Ott eject, I'm sorry, ought to charge, and then you can still open up lanes with your opener. But that's sort of it's totally doable to do that. But there are going to be scenarios where you're going to be like, I really need to dig, and that's where the Hakat comes into. The Hakat World's Reverse has just turned out to be such a strong move on its own, as simple as that. That being able to look at the top 30 cards of your deck, put them back in any order, and then draw the best card off the top that you put there is usually strong enough that you can go ahead and ignore the fact that it's not red, right? And if you really wanted to get that enter charge, you could always sacrifice this and then put a red thing out there. Either way, you need some amount of blue in your deck just to make it function and allow you to draw some extra cards out of discard removal. And that'll get you out of there. The other blue card, and I say this blue in quotations, is Mirai, Jade Beauty. Again, it's basically any card or any color you'd like it to be. So you can play this in Enter Charge if you need to. You can play this and it can be red if you need to, although you've got a ton of red here. You've got other choices. This is something that you should just hold in reserve and be like, all right, I need a certain type of thing. Blizz the Life Burst is actually pretty okay. The next time you take damage by an Insignia this turn, instead you do not take that damage and you get to Enter Charge one. It's pretty okay. Going back at it, we're running 4 Heras. If we're going to be running something that's basically mono red already, there's no real reason to not run Hera. And Hera's very, very, very good here. Moving right along, we've got our 2 Lancelots. Lancelot's awesome. Hera's just as good here. It still counts as 2 removal, right? You play this, you still remove something, and then you can remove something else with the Hera. Lancelot does the same thing. It's less amazing here in the other Ancient Surprise decks, but again, who cares? You're getting so much red, you might as well just use some amount of removal. And then we're playing a new card here. This is also another version of quote-unquote, if we're playing red, we might as well play the core red aggro. At the beginning of your attack phase, if there are 3 or more red signies on your field with different names, and your opponent has 2 or more enter cards in their enter zone, the opponent puts one of their enter into their trash, right? You liked playing some of this. We're also playing some other mono red stuff. This will end up being very, very good for you. Please note that, again, Mirai is actually very, very good in this deck because it can still be red up until the end of your turn, meaning that it will trigger these things and it will also trigger your enter charge as well. And I just like the idea of being able to get rid of some amount of enter. We're already playing some amount of enter denial with Hera, and to follow it up, we're actually playing a full 4 set of Shub Nagara. That's a card you haven't seen in a very long time. It's an Ancient Surprise thing, and its Ancient Surprise auto ability is really the reason you play it, right? Whenever the Signia attacks, if all the Signia on your field are red, you may pay red. If you do, vanish target Signia on your opponent's field with power 12,000 or less. It also has the ability to go red. This Signia gains double crush till end of turn. You're very rarely using this. You very rarely used it even in set 0 for red double crush. But there is a fair amount of enter charging that you can do in this deck, so you might still find yourself doing this. Probably around turn 4 would be the time that I could imagine doing it. And then, of course, we've got a Nobunaga here. You don't like spells in this deck because you want your Signies to trigger World Reverse. Umir does it because Umir has a draw in it, so it can get away with doing that type of thing. But Nobunaga, it's basically a spell. It vanishes things. It gets double crush. You use it. You're a mono red deck. You enjoy it. It does the job that it's done from the beginning of time. It's a 2 of, just like it's always been. Moving over into our life bursts, we're running Cargo again with so much removal at our fingertips, and there's tons, guys. There's tons of removal in this deck. You don't need to only play removal with red, right? It frees you up for something, and we're going to play a little bit of an enter burn package here. Cargo doesn't enter burn, but it does enter screw, and that's something that I enjoy. However, Diabride Natural Engagement Crystal will allow you to do this. What the new card does here is it is auto once a turn. When a red Signia on your field is targeted by the effect of an opponent, the opponent puts one of their cards from their enter zone into their trash. Its enter ability is you can discard 1 card from your hand, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, add one of those cards to your hand, and then put the rest in your trash. Digging for cards is a thing that red wants to do. It's something that we often overlook because we're like, ooh, aggro, push damage. But this allows for some pretty efficient dig. It's not, it's not Devil Stinger dig, but it only digs one less than Devil Stinger. And it has a major upside of Devil Stinger doesn't literally do anything else that this doesn't do, but this also can enter burn, so it's a very easy thing to put in, especially with everything in our deck being red, with the exception of 6 cards. And then Kaga, and a reminder, again, Mirai is red if you want it to be until end of turn. You can play this for green for the enter charge and then still say I want it to also be red. Kagasuchi, when we are playing so many things like LANCELOTS and whatnot, you end up playing Kagasuchi. Kagasuchi is just a nice effect. Allows you to lane fill. It's got something that red doesn't do very often. And I like it. I just like it. It also boosts all of your stuff by 2,000 power, which kind of matters in a world where you are trying to get around Machina Smash. But it also has the ability of discarding 2 cards, and then you can put something else into the field that's a level 3. That'll probably be your Diabribe, but also it could be your Shove Nagaras to push more damage. But more importantly, it's probably Nobunaga, and then you can get yourself a Double Crush. This is the old school Wombo jump combo that No Limit used to do, and you can still do it here. It's still just as effective. We're playing a little bit of removal, right? We're playing a little bit of Enter Burn, so why not play some more Axe? It's got a really good life burst, and then also getting to Enter Charge again, just because you messed with the opponent's Enter, ends up being a pretty good upside to things, and of course we end it with 4 Servant Sharp, as you do, because that is a staple. So again, this is just basically a no frills, I just remove the opponent's Signy, and then I attack. It has some amount of Enter Burn package, which is quite nice if you're looking for something that's more streamlined red, and its Ancient Echo allows it to draw itself out of scenarios if you're a little careful with your blue pieces, to allow yourself to get yourself around discard, which might be, for example, red's natural enemy. Overall, I don't think this deck is all that great. I think the other red decks surpass it, just because this doesn't necessarily do anything, at least yet, until that combo-iness happens. Maybe later down in Diva's lifetime, if we end up going to year 3, the card pool might be deep enough that the dig 6 is very relevant. As it stands right now, it's not as relevant, so it's not my pick for the greatest cards in the world. But it's aggro, it does damage, it ends up on my D tier list. But I think more importantly that if you're trying to get someone introduced to the game of Wixoss, this might be a very good one to do it. It's competitive enough while simultaneously being simple enough for new players to comprehend and play it. Plus, it attacks at a very strange angle that not many decks do, and that might be interesting and appealing, especially to new players. So let me know what you guys think about Ancient Surprise, Tawil, and specifically what cards you were thinking about doing with it, if you were trying to go more of a Rainbow-esque type of thing, or if you were just going to play this with some other L-rigs and make a dream team out of it. What's your opinions? Let me know in the comments down below, and remember, subscribe if you want to see the other center L-rigs from Curiosity Diva get shown.